Hello and welcome. My name is Sebastian Becker. I'm a professor of management, accounting and control at HEC Paris. And together with my co-authors, I studied the transformation of the company Nexans. And today I have the great pleasure to be here with the CEO of Nexans, Christopher Guérin, who has led this transformation and now leads one of the world's leading electrification players. Under Chris' leadership, Nexans has undergone a strategic reinvention through the SHIFT transformation program and the E3 performance management framework. Today, we want to discuss a little bit how his bold vision, the simplification of the business and a new purpose has really radically reshaped the company Nexans, leading to, well, very good results in three areas: the economic area, the environmental area, and in the engagement dimension. So my first question goes to Chris about the origins of this transformation. So Chris, what would you say? What sparked this transformation at Nexans?
Hi Sebastian, and thank you for this interview. I'm very pleased to be with you. And there was the first answer is there was no choice. In 2018, the company was in very massive troubles. Share price divided by 3. The enterprise value moved from 2 billion euros to 700 million. We've lost 50% of our investors. So it was more not a question of strategy, but just a question of survival. And that's certainly the first thing that we work on. And there was something very interesting in 2018 that really shaped the future of what we will mention later on, is the fact that we had a record of growth, organic growth in 2018, but we have unfortunately missed all our financial guidance with a double profit warnings. So for me, there was this message that growth does not mean systematically profits, and that was the first stone of the change of Nexans.
Mm-hmm. So now, you said growth, very important message. Growth doesn't normally translate necessarily into profits as well. Yeah? So before defining this new identity and giving a new purpose, you actually then started to simplify Nexans' business instead of pursuing growth as many other leaders would do. So it's quite an unusual move. So maybe you can explain why this reduction in complexity was so important, and then also how you went about doing this.
Yeah, it started 10 years ago, when I was in charge of my first P&L. It was under the subprime crisis, where my top management at that time in 2009 asked me to close down, restructure 4 of the units that I was leading. So I have to find a way, I'm not a cost killer. I say, why are we in such difficulties now? And of course, when you listen to your manager, it's never their fault, but it's the market. And I remember that day in 2009 where I met a kind of consulting boutique from US, specialized in complexity reduction. And I have this guy came with a suit and a tie and explained me what is complexity reduction, that the first top leader that engaged a massive simplification was Steve Jobs in Apple in 1997. And there was another guy, long blonde hair, yellow t-shirt. It was like us today in July, very hot weather, Bermuda, not something very corporate, And I called to the founder and say, your guy doesn't seem to be an industrial guy. I say, no, Chris, you are full of industrial that are leading the process but don't know anything about profitability. Okay. But it doesn't seem to be a CFO neither, a financial guy. No, you are full of financial people that just pushing indicators but don't know really what is behind each indicator. So who's that guy? He's a mathematician. He will explain you through data the true profitability of your situation per product and per customers. We never worked together because he asked me $1 million per unit, but I started to invent this program called SHIFT, which is all about complexity reduction. And I think certainly this is one of the highest products that companies are facing. We are all focused on variable cost, fixed costs, but no one is able to really calculate the true cost of complexity. And what is complexity cost? It's your number of market that you do serve, multiplied by number of customers that you serve on number of services of SKU that you offer or you produce. Higher is the combination of all the elements, higher is your complexity, and more you are making losses. But those losses are financially not visible on the P&L. And this is why you need to make this effort of rebuilding what is the true cost of complexity of your company.
Mm-hmm. And how did you go about doing this, or what was the most difficult thing in this complexity reduction, if you look back?
The most complexity is to forget the word growth for a certain period, and to remove X amount of your revenue. And this is what happened during COVID time. And that was a fantastic opportunity for us to have the COVID time, you know, because if we are a listed company, so if I go and talk to the investors and saying that I will cut by 20% my revenue, my share price will go down 50%. So we used the COVID period, that was a worldwide chaos, to remove 80%, Sebastian, 80%, 80 of our customer base. So we moved from 17,000 customers served to 4,000. And we remove as well 1/3 of the SKU produced. Of course, our revenue went down 20%. EBITDA went down 15%. But we have been able to unleash more than $500 million of free cash flow just because complexity was removed. And that was a fantastic opportunity to rebuild Nexans on the basis of fewer customers, fewer SKUs, and to regenerate, I will say, a smart growth for the long term.
Mm-hmm. So when I teach this case now to our students at HEC Paris, they sometimes wonder, well, if we reduce complexity and we move to many fewer customers and also fewer SKUs, fewer products, doesn't that mean that also some people don't have enough work to do? Did you have to let go of some employees also as you reduce complexity?
What is true is that we reduced the number of temporary workers, but no one in Nexans lost his job. Mm-hmm. Because we removed 20% of bad cholesterol and we reallocate 15% of our revenue for the good customer. Because we need to grow, you know, we need to load the factories as well. But this is why this program called Shift. At the end, the investors say, come on, how have you been able to triple your profitability with zero growth? Because at the end, flat growth. What they have not been able to understand is what happened inside the matrix of Nexans, is that we removed 20% of bad cholesterol and we increased by 20% of good cholesterol. And at the end it's zero, but the shape of the company have tremendously changed.
Yeah, that's really impressive results. So congratulations on this. And it's also a good segue to the next question. You mentioned that you moved from bad cholesterol to good cholesterol. So as you did this shift, you also at the same time invented a new purpose for the company, which is called Electrify the Future. So can you maybe share a little bit how this purpose was born and in implementing this, what challenges you faced in converting what was a traditional cable manufacturer into a company that's electrifying the future?
The first thing is do not reinvent the wheel. Just study the history of your company. Our company is 140 years old. So we have engaged some historian, some documentalists to reconstruct, rebuild the entire history of Nexans. And we've discovered that we started up in 1879 to support the pioneers of electricity, meaning naming Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse, Benjamin Franklin, that required cable to convey electricity to the world. And we participate to the first electrification revolution from 1890 to 1910, and of course the second revolution that was between 1950 and 1970. So we say, we have been for the first 80 years of existence of the group a pure player of electrification. So let's go back to our inherent DNA of being a pure player. But we need to repair one thing, is that like many companies of those time, we participate of the to the emergence of the fossil fuels. So we have a duties of reparation, not repeating entirely what we did in the past, but to, yes, support the electrification development, but only for the good, only for renewable energies, only for low carbon offer, not replicating the mistakes of the past. And this is the notion of electrify the future, making good, supporting the electrification, but for the good part of the planet through renewable energies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very powerful message. So looking in the history and not coming up with, let's say, an artificial purpose, right? So really
specifically, Sebastian, it's what I say to my team. When you are leading altogether, we are leading a company with a more than 140 years old history. You are just writing a chapter of the history. Maybe it will be only a very small chapter. Do you want this chapter to be meaningful in the history of the company or just pivotal? So that's how I bring the message to my team.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. So we're now in the first years of your tenure as CEO. So you have done the Shift transformation program, reducing complexity. This led you then to create this new purpose, right, based on the history of the company. So now you then also developed a performance management framework that you call E3. And I think this is really interesting for everyone watching. So a lot of companies are trying to do more regarding the sustainable transformation, but few of them really embedded operationally. Yeah? So at Nexans, you developed this framework that is called E3 because it looks at 3 dimensions: the economic dimension, the environmental dimension, and the engagement dimension. Maybe you could share how you came up with this approach and how it works today at Nexans.
Yeah, Sebastian, the first thing is all about convergence on a systemic approach, making sure that everything you do for the economy is not detrimental to environment, neither to engagement. But at first stage, we try to find a kind of executive training available or in the market through HEC, all the other universities, to talk about the 3 dimensions. We have found fantastic, I would say, program for the economical part or for the sustainability part or the social part, but not one program on embedding the 3 together in a very holistic manner. So the first thing we did is to study our own unit's performance. So we already, through the Shift program, classified our unit either on the axis of profit driver, the unit that really driving up the result of the company, or other units that were classified as value burners, burning a lot of cash and diluting the result of the company. So we took the first one, the profit driver, and we start to study their result in terms of environmental indicators. With what we found is that their carbon footprint was reduced by 10% year over year. They were recycling more than 100% of their waste, and their marketing team and innovation team were really driven by eco-design principle. Luck or not luck? Question mark. And after we studied their social dimension, we've seen that diversity and inclusion were 10 points above the group average. Absenteeism ratio were very low, safety were pretty good, and there were a lot of support for training of their teams. So luck or not luck? So we studied the value burners. So we know that on the value burners there was a big issue on the economical part. But when we studied the environmental part, we found as well that here we have a problem. They are kind of polluters. We have 10 units that represent 40% of our CO2 emission for the group. There is no excuse for that. When we talk about the eco-design principle, they even don't know what means eco. Is it economic or ecologic? And we've seen as well that they were not recycling their waste. So problem in economic, but as well problem on the environment. When we go and study their social indicators, absenteeism ratio were at 10%, so far above group average. Diversity inclusion is close to 0. They cut the training program, and safety was a big issue. So at the end, we say this is not a topic of indicators. This is not a topic of capex. We have managers with a high level of consciousness to do good things, not only for the profit, but as well for the people and as well for the planet, and some other that don't care. So we say we need to reinvent our own program, and this is where E3 has started.
Yeah. What I really love about this story is that you have a very customized management approach then, where, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have some plants, some sites where if they are value burners, for example, they would not be allowed to grow.
No.
Because any of their growth would not just, hurt the economic performance, but as you found out through looking at the numbers, would also be bad for the environment, right?
Exactly.
So now you have a very customized approach. So basically every site, depending on the markets that are in and the management maturity and the teams they have, will have their own approach. Can you maybe share one example of what does it look like if I'm a manager of a site now and I have an E3 performance management framework? How do I see my performance? How do I make decisions? Do you have anything to share on this?
Yeah, there is something, you know, we started to set up a kind of strong bridge between economic and environmental through the customer selectivity. You know that we already slash down our number of customers from 17,000 to 4,000, but now for the remaining 4,000, we raise the question. We know that they're good for the economy, but are they good as well for the environmental? So what we do is we calculate, of course, the return on capital employed that we see per customers, but now we calculate for the environmental part the return on carbon employed. And we say this customer is potentially platinum for the economical part, but is this customer still platinum for the environmental part? So we are keep challenging our unit. And for example, I'll give you a concrete example. The logic for Nexans for all the unit is to go local for local. So we have calculated the revenue of each unit in the 40 countries we're operating on the of their revenue in a radius of 800 kilometers distance from the production stand to delivery. And we say you need to make sure that 90% of your revenue is concentrated in a radius of 800 kilometers. If not, we will impose you a tax, a carbon tax for all kilometers that will be above this distance. Local for local, this is where we push very strongly our management to make sure that there is a convergence between the two worlds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so after these many years at the head of Nexans, and if you look back a little bit, so in leading this transformation that is really very inspiring, what type of personal leadership principles guided you on this? And maybe you have some advice for other leaders to share here.
I would say that not an easy question, but maybe that was my pitch to the board of directors in 2018. I say to the board of directors to try to become the CEO, you say, you don't need a CEO. You need a skipper, a surgeon, and a gardener. And let me express what I mean. You need a skipper because the skipper is the one that knows where to go and has this leadership capabilities to embark the people on the vessel on to face storms and difficulties because it will not be a linear way. So the skipper is the one embarking the team. But you need to be a surgeon. You have to fix the problem. And you have to show to your team that you know how to fix problems. Go in the machines, fixing the issues, really understand what is the inherent root cause of inefficiencies of the companies and show the way. And you have to be a gardener because don't bring too much complexity by many initiatives. Sometimes you have to seed some ideas that will take time to mature. It's like talent management. So I think what is important is to have the three dimensions in mind. And I would say today in a perma-crisis world, you have to be as well a kind of architect, to define what is kind of organization you need for the next 10 years in a perma-crisis world. And that's, I think, my recommendation for tomorrow's leaders.
Mm-hmm. Wow, these are really inspiring metaphors. So thanks for sharing the story of the transformation of Nexans today with us and the people watching. So this is really a great story. I'm teaching the case, and I always see how much people learn about how to, well, conduct such a transformation in a company, right? So really thanks for sharing this with us, and also for being so engaged at HEC, funding the chair. So for everyone watching and who's interested, I really recommend you maybe reading the case and some other pieces of communication on it. Chris also wrote a book that's available both in English and French. So everybody who's interested, feel free to check it out. And as our motto says it, learn to dare.